What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the compilation album by Eazy-E. Basically, this project is called Featuring Eazy-E, and it came out in the late fall of 2007. Now, this is 12 years after Eazy-E's death, but this is kind of like a denouement project for me in terms of the Eazy-E content, because I basically reviewed every Eazy-E project now, so this is the last one to really get to as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. So this is a pretty highlighted one here. There's definitely some quality stuff. This has some secret batches of Eazy-E songs that are difficult to find in other places, I would have to suppose. So it's a pretty good pitch to get that in particular. This is definitely a secret batch of these particular songs. Definitely some good stuff to kind of get some of these. I would definitely recommend just purchasing this album as opposed to purchasing the individual albums that just have like one Eazy-E feature or something like that, I'd have to suppose. But the thing about this particular project, there's two versions of this particular album. There's the featuring Eazy-E where he has the sunglasses on, and then there's the starring Eazy-E, which is the version that's on Spotify as far as that pitch kind of has with it. And that scraps 4 songs. Some of those 4 songs are really good, so I'd have to suppose I would just get the featuring Eazy-E. That's the better one. Starring Eazy is just not quite as good, I'd have to say. Starring Eazy is just not quite as good, I'd have to say. But I do recommend featuring Eazy. There's definitely some highlighted stuff. So out of these 16 featuring Eazy-E has 16 songs on here, and out of those 16, I wound up recommending to you 12. So that's a pretty good pitch to get that in particular, I'd have to say. But to talk about this project a little bit, this is basically like the posthumous album by Eazy. Like I said, this is some guest verses that he did in particular songs where he was featured just within that particular pitch. Has some songs with NWA, the Penthouse Players Click, Mac 10, Bone Thugs, some of those type folks as far as that pitch kind of happens. A lot of these I just had not really heard that much. A couple of these songs, like Love for Them Gangstas, was on like the Beverly Hills 3 soundtrack that came out way back in 1994. So there's just some hard to find type Eazy-E songs. This might as well be like more or less this is like a full blown kind of pseudo Eazy-E album. I'd have to say just there's enough secret stuff on here to kind of warrant picking this up just because it does have some good tracks on here that are just more difficult to find as far as that pitch kind of happens with it. But I would have to say it's just kind of the concept. Eazy-E is not on every single song on here. There are a couple towards the end, like there's a song that only has MC Ren on there, and there's like a song by like the Penthouse Players Click that doesn't have Easy on there. He just kind of does like the background vocals and stuff like that, or just kind of like the interludes, just within like speaking more so than rapping. I'd have to say there's just some ones on here. Now, this album may not be a full blown classic, but it's definitely pretty damn well close. This is definitely going to get over an 8.5 and a 9 out of 10. I'd have to suppose. Pretty dis. If it would have had one more song that I would have enjoyed out of these 16 on here, I probably would have given it a 10 out of 10. But I'm just going to go ahead and recommend the 12 out of 16 songs I recommend on here. So they would be Love for Them Gangstas, Two Hard Mothers, Trust No Bitch, Find 'Em, Fuck 'Em and Flee, Get Your Ride On, Black Nigga Killer, For the Love of Money, I'd Rather Fuck You, 24 Hours to Live, Boys in the Hood, the G-Mex, Automobile, and PS Fuck You Too. So talk about some of these. Basically, Two Hard Mothers is a pretty highlighted one. This is off the NWA album. I'd have to say it might have been off 100 Miles Run. I don't really remember which one in particular it was from, but it is an NWA song. I'd have to say it's like a summery kind of city hopping vintage NWA tune. I'd have to say this is a good hop and bop kind of song, and it's good for some smoke, which I'd have to say. So I'm going to talk about these NWA ones pretty briefly, just because they're on the NWA album. You can just check out that particular review I did of that particular one. Yeah, there's a number of NWA songs on here. Two Hard Mothers, Find 'Em, Fuck 'Em and Flee, I'd Rather Fuck You, some of these type ones that just are particularly on the NWA albums, and those are just like I still enjoy these songs quite a bit. The only real song I'm going to talk about more that I didn't enjoy as much last time was Automobile. That's a pretty dope one. I think when I reviewed Niggas for Life back in August, I kind of thought that I didn't enjoy that song as much, but I do appreciate this song a lot more now. So I'm just going to talk about some of these. We'll just get the NWA songs out of the way. So Find 'Em, Fuck 'Em, and Flee is a pretty highlighted one. I'd have to say definitely appreciate this one. This is like an evening kind of haze, out and about type ladies gem. I'd have to say definitely appreciate that particular concept. This is just some typical kind of California late day fun. I'd have to say this is an overall highlighted one. So some of these Eazy and MC Ren type songs are really good. They just have some good bops on here. Don't underestimate like Niggas for Life from 1991. That's a pretty highlighted one just to get that in particular. A lot of these songs that Eazy was on that 1991 album are pretty super stellar, I'd have to suppose. He's not on that album as much, I would have to say, but a lot of these just have some evening type haze and summer type city type popping that just works pretty well. It's just a good project. Definitely would get that project as well. But yeah, there's just some good NWA type tunes on here that work pretty well. So another one like that is I'd Rather Fuck You. Now, obviously, this is a classic Eazy-E song. I'd have to say this belongs on like a greatest hits Eazy-E album if there was one. I'd have to say this is a pretty dope concept. This is like a classic kind of evening G-Funk romance. I'd Rather Fuck You is like a classic evening G-Funk romance of a song. I'd have to say it's one of the This is definitely one of Niggas for Life's best songs, I'd have to say, and it's just overall catchy. So this one's just kind of a sarcastic type romance type song. Easy does these type songs real well. There's another song that's just like that, and that would be Automobile, I'd have to say. Both of these are like a good 1-2 punch. These are just some good bops to kind of have like some evening haze just with ladies as far as both of these are just good for like some evening haze with the ladies as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens. Automobile's just a little bit more of a sarcastic type one, but it's not quite as full blown catchy and melodic as I'd Rather Fuck You, but it is a pretty highlighted one. So Automobile is basically like a sing-songy kind of sarcastic romance songs. Like I was saying, it's pretty similar to Rather Fuck You. I'd have to say it's just an affable kind of wind down makeshift of a song. I'd have to say just an overall highlighted one. So Eazy-E really had some badass vibes on Niggas for Life from 1991. Despite the fact that he wasn't on some of the biggest hits on there, like Always Into Something, he definitely should have been on Always Into Something. But I still would have to say that some of these songs that he was on off of Niggas for Life were pretty highlighted. So those are the four ones just to talk about those particular ones. There are some other ones on here that are pretty dope. I'd have to say Love for Them Gangsters is a pretty highlighted one. This is off of the Beverly Hills 3 movie soundtrack. So I would just recommend getting this album as opposed to getting Beverly Hills Cop 3. I mean, you could get that one, but it just doesn't really have as much boisterous type content. I'd have to say. I think the Eazy-E song's probably the best moment off that 1994 soundtrack. So I would say this is like a typical kind of not Love for Them Gangsters is like a typical kind of 90s California gangster rap type tune. I'd have to say this is like a sunny evening haze. I would definitely have to feel like, and this is just some nice G-Funk and lowrider type music. I'd have to suppose pretty highlighted one to kind of get this one. This is the sort of stuff that a lot of folks tried to mimic back in the mid and late 90s as far as that pitch kind of happened with it. Just some good sunny cruising California type haze. I'd have to suppose definite highlight to fuck with. I'd have to suppose it's a pretty nice one. Trust No Bitch is another highlighted one, just like that one. Love for Them Gangsters, Trust No Bitch are like a good 1-2 punch for Love for Them Gangsters and Trust No Bitch are like a good 1-2 punch for like some low riders and stuff like that. I'd have to suppose pretty good highlight for that sort of stuff. This is like a Blaze one, kind of Sunny Skies classic. I'd have to suppose classic California gem. I'd have to say definitely. This is like a synthy highlight. I would definitely feel like this is just like some slow cruise type tune. This is like a slow cruise type tune. I would definitely have to say, and it's a pretty overall dope song. I'd have to suppose. So it's definitely a good concept for that. This feels like vintage type stuff. This is the Penthouse Players Click along with DJ Quick on there. So it's a pretty good concept to get these folks just some vintage kind of California just within that particular pitch. So it's just some good kind of malaise just within that particular pitch. A lot of these are like some secret Eazy-E type songs. So I definitely recommend these. These are some ones that even weren't on like Eazy-E's typical kind of albums in terms of some of the heat that was on some of those particular type ones. So this is definitely an album you need to pick up if you know Eazy. This is one that just should not be ignored, and I would definitely get this one once again as opposed to starring Eazy. This just has more hits on there. I'd have to say definitely some good bops on here. Black Nigga Kill is another highlighted type one. This is like a late day kind of gangster rap haze of a song. I'd have to say definite nice one for that sort of pitch. It's like a woozy kind of tormented kind of ruminating. I'd have to say definitely. This song is pretty similar to Murder Was the Case by Snoop Dogg, I'd have to say. So it's pretty dope concept to get that one in particular. Just the tormented type feel of Murder Was the Case by Snoop Dogg off of his Doggy Style album. Just that same sort of ruminating, just in like a real kind of augmented and just in a real kind of distorted and woozy type atmosphere. I would definitely have to suppose this is probably one of the best songs off the album, I'd have to say. But then there's a lot of songs that kind of have that sort of format. Black Nigga Kill's a real good example of that. Another real good example of that would be 24 Hours to Live. This is a surprising one. Definitely appreciate 24 Hours to Live is definitely a surprising one. Definitely appreciated this one quite a bit. I'd have to say this is another woozy kind of anguished, contemplative haze of a song. I'd have to say this one has some boisterous character. I would definitely feel like, and this is just a nervous kind of makeshift glaze of a song. So this one's really clever. I just really feel like about this particular one, this is kind of like a makeshift type song, but it just kind of feels like you're in a nervous wreck, some pitch like that, just kind of contemplative and just stuff like that, just kind of not sure. Just the concept of having 24 hours to live just within that pitch. I'm not sure which particular album or where this song came from. I think it was made in like 1992 or something, but this is definitely a secret Eazy-E song. This is definitely a secret Eazy-E song that kicks a lot of ass, and it's definitely worth the investment. Some of these songs on here, Black Nigga Killer, 24 Hours to Live, the Penthouse Players Click songs, some of these type ones, I would have to say, just some of these particular type ones really are worth getting just for the Eazy secret verses that you get that you probably won't hear in too many places. Another one that's pretty good like that would be the Boys in the Hood G Mix. Now, I don't remember where this song was. I want to say it might have been on like the Boys in the Hood G Mix might have been on like the It's on Dr. Dre 187 and Killa EP from '93. I'm not really sure where that song particularly went, but it's still a good highlight to get this one in particular. Definitely would pick this song up just for this one also. It's just another good G Mix remix to like Boys in the Hood from like the like the mid 80s, I'd have to say. So this is like a classic kind of 90s G-Funk bounce of a song, I'd have to say, definitely. This is like some great cruise out kind of heat, I would definitely feel like. And this is just a sunny California outing type vibes that this song particularly kind of has. So this is some good bop type stuff on here. Eazy had tons of these cruise out kind of lowrider type sunny type songs, I would have to say, just within that particular pitch. And this song and the Boys in the Hood G mix is no exception, I had to say. Just plenty of good songs for that particular type of atmosphere, I'd have to suppose. Good highlight for that. Oh, the Love of Money is obviously a good highlight. This is a classic kind of Bone Thugs and Eazy-E type tune, I would have to say. This is like some classic 90s Midwest G-Funk, I'd have to say. This we needed, of course, way more. We needed, of course, way more Bone Thugs and Eazy-E type cuts, I'd have to say. And this is just a super electric kind of song. So this is a definite highlight. I would pick up this version because it's not on the Starring Eazy-E album, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty dope concept to get this one. This, is, of course, is like a vintage type tune. Most folks have probably heard this if you know enough about Eazy-E and Bone Thugs, but this is still good that this is on this particular album. It helps bolster it, I'd have to say. I'm trying to think of some other ones I haven't talked about on here. Oh yeah, P.S. Fuck You Too. This is a pretty highlighted one. This is another off the Penthouse Players Click album. I'd have to say pretty good concept for that. This is like a solid kind of early 90s city haze of a song, I would have to say. This feels like an advancement of the NWA sound from like the early 90s and 80s as far as that pitch kind of has with it. And this is just like a glossier kind of, this just has a glossier sound compared to some of the NWA boom bap type stuff from like the late 80s. And this is just a nice evening gem. So this is for 1992, this is a pretty good. For 1992, this is a pretty good produced song. I'd have to say definitely one of the better beats out of 1992, just before like Dr. Dre's The Chronic and the G-Funk sound and some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. But it's just a dope enough concept to get some of these in particular. This is just the Penthouse Players Click. This has some pimpish type songs that just work pretty well. I'd have to say Eazy-E definitely should have dropped the verse on here. It's too bad that he didn't, but you at least get DJ Quick on here. But it's just kind of the concept of these songs definitely could have used Eazy-E again. He probably should have been on here, would have definitely been a nice touch to have gotten, but his vocals on the song do contribute. I'd have to suppose that this kind of gives it like some extra kind of like it just kind of gives it some emphaticness just to be able to say that, it has to suppose, but he doesn't really drop a rap verse on here. So it's just kind of the concept about this particular album, I'd have to say. So basically, so that would be the album. So talk about the 4 songs out of 16 I didn't recommend on here. Basically, some songs like LA is the Place and Fat Girl were just some poor boom bap type beats that just didn't really deliver that well, and were just kind of some hideous ones to kind of listen to that just really sounded ancient. These songs just sounded ancient, were not that affable to listen to, I'd have to suppose. It's a pretty poor concept to get some of those in particular. Then I'd have to say the We Want Easy, the 12 remix, was just not that interesting one. That was too lengthy a song, I'd have to say, and just didn't. The We Want Easy remix was just too lengthy a song, I'd have to say, and just didn't contribute much to the original type version that was just better on the Easy Does It album. I'd have to suppose that was a pretty poor one, just didn't really contribute that well at all. I'd have to suppose just really didn't add up to much. And then, of course, and then Ruthless Villain was just kind of a poor one that didn't have Eazy on there at all. So that was just kind of a waste of a song that probably shouldn't have been on the particular album, I'd have to suppose. It's just kind of a poor concept to kind of get that one in particular, I'd have to suppose. But it was just kind of a poor concept to get that one in particular kind of on there, I'd have to suppose. But that's just the particular thing about it, I'd have to say. So to rank this particular album, me scoring, but to score this particular album, so me recommending 12 songs out of 16 on this particular album, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. I mean, it's real boisterous effort, had a lot of good stuff on here just within that relative pitch, some secret Eazy-E songs that you can't find anywhere else for the most part, or just or in spots that you probably would just prefer to get this project as opposed to like 1 or 2 songs that he's on just for those best moments, I'd have to say. Just for those best moments, I'd have to suppose this a lot of good California type productions on here, just some real good low rider and ride out type music that just works really effectually well. And there's just some evening haze on here, just some good bops to kind of have like some evening makeshift, just some 4:30, 5:30, 6:30 p.m. type wind down type music, smoke a swish or something like that, just cruise out and just like the California breeze and stuff like that in summer weather as far as that affability kind of happens. Some of these are NWA songs that work like that. Some of these are romantic type songs like Automobile and Rather Fuck You, some of those type ones that work like that. Just some good type pitches just within that affability. There's just some good California type music, and I would definitely say that Eazy-E is basically like a California icon. That should be known by this point, but just being able to say that a lot of this is just pitch kind of 90s California type sound that just is hard to replicate, and very few folks are able to do it as well as Eazy-E just within that pitch of like G-Funk, just classic kind of 90s G-Funk and like late 80s kind of California type sound that just worked pretty well. Early 90s type stuff. Just a lot of good pitches that Eazy-E carved out a sound and did it extremely well just within that pitch. So it's a dope concept. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give like a 9.5 out of 10. Also, just because there's so many good gems on here, I'd have to suppose plenty of good affable type moments. Just a lot of these work pretty damn well. I'd have to suppose really only the songs. There's just a few poor boom bap type beats on here, and a couple songs that Eazy-E isn't really on that well, or just not really that Eazy-E just is not really on, or just doesn't deliver that well. In particular, I'd have to say for the vast majority of it, 9.5 out of 10 is pretty overall super stellar. I'd have to suppose most of these are just California sound, just outing type fare, and just city hopping and lowrider cruising and stuff like that. Swisher smoking, some of those type pitches, just some 90s California type summery type vibes that just hits extremely heavily. So this is just a mastery of that particular type sound. This effectively works within that facet. I'd have to suppose it's pretty dope cons to get that one. So in terms of the future, that's difficult because Eazy is deceased, and this is basically like his most recent project in terms of the stuff that might be new or just the relative type stuff that he would have done just within that pitch. This would have to suppose. So yeah, I would have to say that that basically takes care of it. There's not really any more Eazy-E to really get to. I reviewed everything of NWA, Eazy-E, and stuff like that. So this would just be kind of like the cap off, the denouement. This would kind of be like the cap off, the denouement to that particular type stuff, I'd have to suppose. But this is definitely a good bang of something to go out with, I'd have to suppose. There's some classic California type here that I would highly, there's some classic California here that I would highly recommend. And this is just some excellent stuff that you don't want to miss out on, I'd have to say.